So the last step that we have is mastering our mix down, or our stereo bounce from our project. So mastering is basically the process of bringing our mix up to kind of commercial level so that it stands up against other pieces of music that you're already listening to. So I'm going to get the mix that I was just working on. I'm going to import it into the track. Let's import the tempo. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to save my project straight away. Okay. So, we don't want to be aiming to add anything different to this track, but we are aiming to exaggerate what we already have. So we are going to do some basic processing here. I'm going to compress my mix a tiny little bit to start with. So no more than 2:1 on the ratio, because we don't want this sound jumping around all over the place. So just a little bit of compression just to control where I have some little fluctuations. And I'm going to go to my master fader. And I'm going to apply linear phase EQ. So linear phase EQ, you can't use this within a project because it introduces latency into the signal path. And this is because it splits the sound into different channels and processes them independently before joining them back together. Whereas your normal channel EQ will just process the whole sound coming through it. So all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to roll off at about 27.5 Hertz, and I'm going to roll off at the very top just to reduce any kind of fizziness at the top or any rumble at the bottom. Now I may come back to this and exaggerate in the presence range just a tiny bit, just to make this a little bit brighter. I'm going to turn it off for now, but thinking about it, it's quite deep, this track. So make it a bit brighter in the top end. So I'm just going to go for a bit more compression here. So this is stereo spread. So it's a little bit like the EQ. So we've got low frequencies and high frequencies. we've then got left and right. And what happens is the sound is pushed to the left or to the right, creating a bit of a shift in the balance of the sound as you listen to it. So you'll hear, as I sweep through this, more and more of the sound is kind of pushed either way. Some of them sound a little bit weird, but if we aim to take this out of the low end, then none of the sounds that need to sit in the middle of the track will be pushed out onto the sides. So our kick, bass, snare will all be sat pretty much where we want them. Now, we don't have to use this, but sometimes it can introduce quite a nice bit of space. Now, the last thing we need in our chain is a limiter. So this sets the output volume that our track is going to be at. So we don't want it to be above 0. So if I just set it to minus 0.2. I'm having to add quite a lot of gain to that to get it to come through. So I'm going to come back to my compressor. I'm going to see if I can boost it here at all. It's not perfect, and there are many other plugins and other ways that you can use this, but just using the Logic tools and the knowledge that we kind of already have, the only thing that we looked at here that we've not covered already was the stereo spread And then at the very end, I just added the multipressor just to kind of give a little bit more energy. But this is basically 4 compressors. So you can choose which frequency range they fit and what and how the compressor is behaving with each band that you have divided up. So we've got low end, sub, we've got our low mids, and high frequency. Now, the only thing I draw your attention to is at the beginning of the track, there will be a tiny little gap. So just put a little fade. And then if we go to the end of the track, we want to listen to where it fades away to. So it's definitely gone by there. And then I'm going to bring in my fade and just make sure that track disappears fully. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to press U, File, Bounce, Project or Section. The settings are exactly the same as what I used in the previous project to export. The one thing that I didn't mention last time was the file type. So split would give you 2 files, a left and a right, which you would then join back together. Interleaved gives you the left and the right weaved together, cannot be divided. So I'll just export this and then I'm going to re-import it back into the project just so you can see the difference between the waveforms. And as I said, this is not perfect and there are other tools that we can use, but as a rough overview and how to bring our tracks up to at least a volume that is comparable, this is a basic chain that you could follow. It's also quite typical for people to get somebody else to do mastering for them, because once you've been working on a track and you've mixed it for quite a while and you're connected to it, you stop listening to it. So it's quite common to give it to somebody else. But even in that instance, you should still be aware of what the mastering engineer is going to want. So there are 2 files for comparison for the end. So our mixdown and then our mastered file that's been re-imported, just so we can see the difference.